Ahmed Batevi covered quite a bit, so I'll try to provide some examples of what he was talking about. The UN Security Council has imposed travel bans and asset freezes against officials involved in Iran's nuclear program, but not those implicated in massive human rights abuses. It is time for human rights to be taken seriously. It is time for the likes of Sakineh Mohammadi, a woman at imminent risk of being stoned to death for adultery, to be heard and her life protected. My name is Nazanin Afshin-Jam. I'm an independent human rights activist and founder of Stop Child Executions organization. I'm not part of any political group or organization. I'm here today to try to be a voice for the voiceless, those inside Iran who cannot speak up for themselves due to a repressive theocratic regime that does not tolerate any form of dissent and massacres its own people in order to maintain status quo. At the start of the revolution, my own father was imprisoned, tortured, and nearly executed by the Revolutionary Guard simply because he was allowing alcohol, music, and dancing at the hotel he managed, which unbeknownst to him were forbidden under the new Islamist rules. For the last 30 years, there have been systematic human rights abuses by this regime. Freedom of expression is severely curtailed, with the arrest of journalists, web bloggers, shutting down of newspapers, as Ahmed has already pointed out. Women live under gender apartheid, where their lives are valued as being literally worth half of a man legally. There's inequality in divorce, custody, inheritance, and choosing their professions, and of course dress. Ethnic and religious minorities, again, as Ahmed pointed out, have been violently discriminated against. Give you a couple examples. There's two ladies, Marzieh Esmailabad and Maryam Rostampur, two Christian converts who right now are detained in jail and could face the death penalty. Baha'is also have been mentioned, suffer. They're not allowed to, they're denied access to universities and certain jobs, and their 7 leaders are currently also detained and could be executed shortly. Homosexuals are subjected to the death penalty, like the case of Makvan Muludzadeh, a minor who was executed last year in 2007 of December when he was engaging in homosexual acts when he was 13 years old. Iran has the highest number of executions in the world per capita, coming only second in terms of numbers after China. They are, however, the worst offender when it comes to child executions, despite its commitment to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Charter of the Rights of the Child, to which it is a state party. 160 children currently, at least, remain on death row in Iran. 3 children were executed this year, 8 were executed last year, and we've documented 12 the year before that. There's 3 urgent cases right now of Behnoud Shojai, Reza Padashi, and Hossein Haqqi, who could, again, face execution any day. And I encourage you, if you have some connection, to please put pressure for these boys. This is all documented in my organization, Stop Child Execution's newest report, called From Cradle to Coffin, a report on child executions in Iran. And if there's anybody here who's interested, I have a few copies with me that I could hand over. Otherwise, it is available on PDF. The economy in Iran continues to suffer. Most people have to work 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Labor unionists fight for their right for fair pay and are silenced through intimidation and arrest, like the leader of the bus drivers union, Mansour Osanlu, who is still in jail to this day and whose health is deteriorating considerably. He had his tongue sliced in order to silence him. With the high inflation rates and high unemployment, many university grads are left hopeless, turning to drugs. There's a spike in drug abuse and HIV/AIDS and prostitution. Unfortunately, instead of combating these social ills, the regime have arrested 2 of the top leaders in terms of HIV/AIDS research, Doctors Kamyar and Arash Al-Alayi. They're top in their field for research and harm reduction programs. Instead of helping these downtrodden people, money is spent abroad to fund factions like Hamas and Hezbollah. Frustration and anger has been brewing in the Iranian people's hearts for the last 30 years. And the presidential elections that you witnessed on television after June simply added fuel to the fire of discontent when the Iranian people felt insulted after the poll results indicated that there was fraud. Within the pillars of the Islamic Republic, their vote was not taken seriously. And that's why you saw the millions of people coming out in the streets and chanting, "Where is my vote?" One of the Islamic Republic of Iran's greatest fear is a velvet revolution, and they'll use force to quell any such thing. Innocent peaceful protesters were met with violence through beatings, hacking, dormitories being raided, homes being raided, people being stabbed with knives, gunshots. I'm sure all of you saw the face of Neda Agha Sultan, a young peaceful protester who was shot in the heart by a Basiji force, by a Basiji. There has been 30 reported deaths by the government, although the opposition claimed that there's over 72 deaths. There's indications that there's many more than this. Some have been buried in unmarked graves. Whereas the street demonstrations have died down considerably, there are still demonstrations taking place. The brutality certainly has not subsided. 100 people, including journalists, human rights defenders, opposition candidates of this so-called Green Revolution, stand on trial in show trials reminiscent of Stalin's 1930 show trials. They're accused of conspiring with foreign enemies and instigating or encouraging the unrest. Through torture, many are forced to make false confessions implicating the US, Britain, or Israel. There's been reported 4,000 people that were initially detained, and then there's those who have disappeared. There's people like Sohrab Arabi, whose mother was told of her son's death 26 days after he was killed by Basiji forces. Families have been forced to fetch their child bodies from so-called cold houses. They're not even proper morgues, where their child's frozen bodies are handed to them, provided they sign a form absolving the government from any wrongdoing. On the bodies are clear evidence of torture and abuse, like 24-year-old Amir Javidifar, who died in custody after brutal torture, including blows to the head and extracted nails. Taraneh Mousavi was detained at a peaceful protest. Saideh Puraghai was participating in one of those late-night chants on top of her roof, chanting Allahu Akbar in protest of the demonstrations. Both these girls were arrested separately, gang-raped by Basiji forces, and had acid burnt on their lower bodies to try and hide the evidence of such abuse. A 50-year-old boy referred to as Reza was arrested for wearing a green wristband of the opposition. He too was brutally tortured, sodomized continuously over 20 days by prison guards. And upon his release, he said, "My life is over. I don't think I can ever recover." There's many of these kinds of cases. There's another boy who had a similar experience to Reza, and upon his release, after his father paid a heavy bail fine, he took his own life by jumping off a bridge. This ruins people's lives forever. Opposition presidential candidate Mehdi Karoubi publicly acknowledged that detainees were raped savagely and called for an investigation of these systematic rapes. This week, regime officials shut down Mehdi Karoubi's office, confiscated his private files containing evidence of these human rights abuses, and he and the other vetted opposition candidate, Mir Hossein Mousavi, may be arrested for advocating against the state.